So I had a guy ask me a question earlier today. He got into a discussion with a friend, a colleague, or something, where he made the statement that taxes don't fund government spending, and his friend or colleague went all crazy, as most uneducated or uninformed people in this area do. And he said, "Of course they do. The government has to collect taxes," and of course that is wrong. So I'm going to try to expound on that. Again, I've done it many, many times in videos here. In fact, recently I think I talked about um, a well-known or somewhat well-known publication article by former New York Fed President Beardsley Ruml back in 1946, when he was quoted in an article saying that taxes don't, that, I'm sorry, it was stated as um, taxes for revenue are obsolete. And he understood that with a currency issuing nation that has the ability to basically print its money, taxes are not used to fund government spending. And don't forget, 1946, we were still on a gold standard, but he understood the distinction there between a currency issuing nation and one that does not, or an entity that does not. But anyway, here's some things you can use if you're talking to people about the taxes fund government spending, which is not correct. I mean, and most people are going to believe that because it's hard not to believe it. We have to send our money, or taxes are paid out of our income, and they go away from us. So there is a very real, not just an impression, but a real feeling that we feel when we don't have that money anymore, and we see it being taken away by the government. But if you've ever played the game of Monopoly or any kind of board game where the game distributes money to you, if you have to pay the game, in other words, in Monopoly, anyone who's ever played it, you know that, you got these little cards on the board, chance and community chest. If you land on those cards, sometimes a card pops up that says pay tax. Basically, you are just giving back money that was already distributed by the game. And it's the same way in real life with the government and the way we pay taxes. Those dollars that we collect either as income or through our hard work, whatever. The taxes are something, a portion of what we pay back, but that we've already collected, money, dollars that have been spent into the economy through government spending. Um, and as I've said in the past, the government is a maker of dollars. Everybody else is a taker. Everybody else is a taker. Okay, so when you talk to your friends, a simple question you could pose to them is, are you a maker of dollars? And they cannot say, they might say, well, I made dollars because I worked, but you did not make the dollar. I mean, you were paid in dollars, but the dollar can only come from one place, and that is the government. And by the way, that goes for banks as well. Banks create credit, but ultimately that credit is backed by government dollars, because banks, for every dollar of credit they create, they have to hold a certain percentage of reserves. And ultimately, it is the government, Treasury slash Fed, that provides the reserves into the banking system. Now, that's true under our current, the institutional structure that we have. Banks are basically agents of the government. When they create credit, the credit is backed by those reserves, which are dollars that can only be created by the Fed or Treasury. All right, so that's another way that you can go about explaining it. Most people have played Monopoly. I mean, I think that game exists in something like 180 different languages or something like that. So, again, when you play Monopoly, before you can even play the game, the money has to be distributed by the game. Everybody gets a certain amount of money to start off with. I mean, the money comes from the game. As a matter of fact, if you read the rules of Monopoly, it's stated in the rules that if you run out of those colorful bills, It says just write down denominations on a piece of paper and use that as the currency. Exactly. Same way that the government does it. All right. They're not constrained by tax revenues in their ability to spend. Now, that doesn't mean we don't impose artificial constraints on ourselves. For example, the debt ceiling is one artificial constraint that we impose on ourselves. But that's a political thing. You know, Congress gets together and says, okay, we raise it by 2 trillion and boom, they got another 2 trillion in spending power. All right. So, and again, you say, well, they have to borrow the money. Well, they don't have to borrow the money because all treasuries can only be paid for with dollars. And those dollars are already in existence to be able to buy the treasury. I mean, if they weren't, the Treasury could never sell a single bond or note or bill because there'd be no dollars to buy them with. And the Fed, and I've said this a million times too, but I'll repeat it again because I'm sure there's going to be some people on here who says the Fed, you know, monetizes the debt. They don't do that. The Fed cannot buy treasuries or government securities directly from the Treasury. They buy it from in the secondary market from dealers, and those dealers have bought treasuries with dollars that are in the system that have piled up in the system as a result of government spending. And a treasury is a dollar with a term and a coupon. And a dollar is the same thing as a treasury of zero maturity. That's it. I mean, yeah, that's about it. You know, it's about as complicated as it gets, and it's not really complicated. I mean, most people should understand this. But again, I can, you know, I get it that when you write a check out to the Treasury to pay your tax bill, it does feel like you are funding the government, but you're not. So that's all I have to say about that for now. Anyway, I'm sure this question will come back again. Bye.